Hi everyone. Is everyone able to view my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. So before we start, let me introduce myself. First
Yes.
of all, hello everyone and welcome to this course. It's amazing to have you on board and I'm super excited to start this journey together with you. My name is Rahul and I will be your instructor in this course. In this course, you will learn web development from ground up. From ground up, I mean there are no prerequisites. We would start with the basics and then dive deep into all the core concepts you need to know and all the concepts you need to explore, which would make you a full stack web developer and make your web developer journey very easy. As you can see, what we have mentioned over here is web development made easy. Why? Because we have made our curriculum in such a way so it would be made easy. How? Because there would be a lot of quizzes, lot of concepts with beautiful illustrations, and so many step-by-step tutorials. So what is the goal of this course? The basic goal of this course is to build beautiful, responsive, real-world websites using some awesome technologies such as your HTML, your CSS, JavaScript, React, and some backend technologies like your Express.js, and so on. Before we dive into these core technologies, we need to understand some very basics of what web development is composed of. And I know this industry is continuously evolving industry. Every day technologies are getting enhanced to make it easier for us to write code. Considering this aspect, my objective with this course would be to teach you everything. I mean, everything that you would need to become a full stack web developer so that you can continue to learn and pick up new languages and framework as they go in and out of style. As you can see, JavaScript is one of the core languages, but there are many frameworks right now in the market like React, Angular, Vue.js, Next.js, and so on. So which one to choose at what point of time we would be understanding this. Right now, our course is composed of React.js. It is one of the prime frameworks, prime JavaScript libraries, which can be used to create awesome front-end websites and front-end side of any application. But our course is not limited to only front end. It's a complete full stack, so it would cover backend. And backend, we would be covering with Node.js, Express.js. We would be using our, let's say, databases. What would be the database? It would be MongoDB and so on. So the entire course would be based on step-by-step tutorials, easy to understand illustrations, coding exercises, and much more. Our one session would be of around 90 minutes. So without further ado, let's begin and understand what we would be covering, what our curriculum would be. Okay. So let's understand what our curriculum would be. So these are few sections which I've listed over here. So this is a very broad section. Understand this. This is a very broad section. Every section would have list of subsections under it, and we are going to discuss that today. We are thoroughly going to understand what a curriculum would be, what we would be studying in this long journey together. So as you can see, there are a few topics that I've listed over here: introduction to internet, web development. Then you see application development lifecycle, your tools and softwares, your different tech stacks that are required, front end, back end separately, and what is a full stack web development. So these are the basic part. And this is what we would be covering in the free prep up course. Your free prep course that we are doing right now, we would be covering this one, this particular part. All these four parts we would be covering. So this would provide us entire overview how web industry is composed of. What are important terminologies and technologies that every developer needs to know before jumping onto the core technologies. Remember, core technologies is the coding part. We write in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React. This is one coding part. But before that, there are so many aspects one need to take care of. So before diving into our core technologies, we would make sure we understand this. So everybody clear so far? No questions? Anything you want me to just uh, so just give me a hands up. Just say yes or no. Right. Perfect. Perfect. So let's move ahead. So let's quickly understand each part of our curriculum thoroughly. So for instance, if I'm taking this one right now, Introduction to Internet and Web Development, what this section would contain, how many subsections would be there. Let's understand with a bunch of cool examples. So let me pull up my whiteboard for you. So let's say curriculum walkthrough. Okay, let's see. Our first topic was understanding internet, right? So let's say our first topic is Internet and World Wide Web. So under this section, there are several subsections. One of the subsection is understanding internet. So in understanding internet, just here, understanding internet, this is a very generic term. What exactly we would be covering when we reach to this section? So there would be three major topics. Our first topic would be what is a network in general? What do we call a network? Second topic would be how internet network is set up. So network could be anything in layman's language, in general language, network could be anything. Then we are coming to specific part. What is internet network? And the third part would be how we can use it as developers. So this is very important. We know what internet is. Everybody is using it. Everyone in public is using it. But how we as developers can bring it to our use, how we can use it to make lives better, what we can do with it. For instance, let me show you an example. You can see image over here, right? So there are multiple computers, computer A, B, C, and so on up to, I think, J. So these are so many computers, and each computer, for instance, if we take, let's say a computer, okay, let me just quickly now. Yeah. So for instance, we take computer A, right? So you can see our A has been linked with every computer out there. A is linked with B, A is linked with C, A is linked with D, and so on. So this is bunch of networks connecting our computers. So this is a very broad overview what we would be understanding what inside our network section. And how internet network is set up in physical world, we would be continuing that journey from over here. And how we can use this internet network setup for us as developers. So this section would deal with that. Okay, so this was one subsection. Remember, we are doing full stack web development. And full stack means that a developer needs to know many concepts before getting industry ready. Before moving out into the market and seeking for a job, you need to know many basic concepts. And I assure you, we would be covering that. Let's move on to the second subsection under our first major section. Remember, this is one major section, and we're talking about subsections under that. So let's move ahead. Our second subsection would be Introduction to Web. Let me clear my screen. Cool. So our second subsection is dealing with Introduction to Web. Now, we often get confused between internet and web. Why? Because we sometimes feel web is internet, internet is web, or going online is simply means internet, which is not the same. Both of these are pretty different. And that difference we would be understanding in this section. So the difference, the major point that we would be covering is internet and the difference between internet and web, what internet services are, what is World Wide Web. We often use www in every website. Every website has this World Wide Web. Now, what is that? Why are we using that? Why this was created? So we would be understanding this. So let's see this example, a very, very sweet example. This is internet. Internet is connecting people. Oh, sorry, I'll correct myself. Internet is connecting computers. You can see over here, one computer, second computer, third computer. Internet is connecting them. But here, the web is connecting people. How? You can have so many websites like your social networking websites. For example, Facebook. Facebook cannot exist without World Wide Web. So internet is connecting people through financial applications, through your e-commerce sites, through your video streaming platforms, and so on. So are we able to understand what we would be covering, right? Okay. Okay, let's move on to our next screen. Okay, perfect. So let's move on to our next screen, our next subsection. So this is one, these are the two subsections so far. Let's move on to the third subsection. Our third subsection would be what is a browser. So every day we open a browser, we search something onto it, and we get the required information. But have you ever wondered why browsers were created? What is a search engine? What are different types of browsers? What is cross-browser compatibility? Components of a browser? What are functions and features of browser? Don't worry. If you have no idea about it, I would be covering this in this particular subsection. And if you have a little bit idea about it, it's wonderful. You would get a wonderful refresher as well. So basic, the major points would be what search engine is, what are components of a particular browser, why browser was created, what are functions, and so on. So for instance, you can see over here, there are multiple browsers: Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Internet Explorer, Opera, and so on. The list is endless. It's as per the choice of browser comes as per user's preference or the operating system you're usually on. So for instance, if you're using the Mac operating system, the browser that you're using would be Safari. And if you're on Windows operating system, the browser that you would be using is Chrome, usually. You can use Firefox as well, and so on. So this subsection would deal with that. Let's see what the next subsection would be. The next subsection is very important. It's one of the most important topics, and I insist every one of you to not miss this topic if you want to be a full stack web developer. Every day in your coding journey, in your full stack journey, you need to encounter this model. This is client server model. Why this is important? This helps us understand what is the destination and what is the source of information. For instance, it's like who is asking for some information and from where that information is being provided. So what this would cover is the destination and source of information. So let me give you a very good example. For instance, you are using your smartphone right now, and you want to view the latest news. You type into search engine. Now you can see how everything is connected. You go to search engine, you use World Wide Web, and then you type, for instance, New York Times. You want to open New York Times. You're requesting some information, and there is some computer, some system out there in the world which is providing you this information. Understand this. There is some computer, we do not know what that is right now. We would be covering that. But the information regarding New York Times reach to your system, right? How this is happening, what is the source, what is the destination of information, we would be covering in this particular model. What is a client, what is a server? We would be discussing everything. Moving ahead, the next part is very much linked with the client server model. It is request response cycle. So what happens over here? Under request response cycle, our application follows a particular path.
Progress.
Hi. I would request everyone to please mute your Zoom calls. So what is request response cycle? It is the path that our application follows to get the information requested. The route information travels to reach the end user. So there must be some path. So we are talking about this path. This is request response cycle. What path our application is following to get the required information. In client server model, we are looking at what is the destination and source, and request response cycle, we are looking at the path. So let me show you a good example of it. So you can see how information travels across the internet. It's a very brief but very important question. How information travels across the internet. So you can see this particular, suppose this is a developer and he wants to access the weather forecast for a date which is after 1 month. For instance, for January 1st, this person wants to know weather forecast. So he requested some information, right? And there is some computer out there which is providing that information. There is some computer out there which is providing that information, remember. And this person is getting that information through a particular path, is getting that response. He requested some weather forecast information and he got the answer in form of a response. This is called request response cycle. Now, what is HTTP? We would be covering in detail under this section. So these are certain set of rules and protocols. We would be covering that. You need not to worry about anything right now. This is just an overview. I'm giving you an idea of what all our curriculum contains. So next, moving ahead, is how web works. So this seems to be a very generic term, that how web works. So have you ever wondered how we are able to see websites from internet onto our laptops, from internet onto our computers or mobile devices? Now, this happens because of some very interesting technologies and services. What those services are, like your internet service provider, what type of devices are connected on the internet, what is your IP address, what is URL, what is domain name system. We would be covering all these terms and technologies under this subsection. So the major taglines or major points for this subsection would be internet service provider, devices, your IP addresses, what they are, why they are used, what is uniform resource locator, what is your domain name system, everything. So just see this example. So right now you need not to worry what exactly this is. This every term would be covered in detail. So how a simple website name, which is written in English language, is converted into an IP address, we would be covering that. And how this IP address is recognized by some computer out there, the server, we would be understanding this under how web works. So this is the first section of our curriculum. Remember, this is the first section. These are not all the topics we would be covering. This is the first section. Under this first section, these are all the topics. These are all subsections. So all these subsections would be covered under Internet and World Wide Web. So let's move on to our second topic. So what was our second topic? So this is introduction to internet and web development, right? So let's move on to our second topic, application development lifecycle. What is application development lifecycle? Let's see it. So I'll just clear my whiteboard. Okay, so let's move ahead and see what application development lifecycle is. So this section particularly describes the process of application or software or website creation. So you are going to be full stack web developer. You are going to write applications from scratch. There must be some defined process to create an application, right? So this process is covered in detail under this second section. So let's move ahead. Application development lifecycle. So in general, what all we would be covering, we would be covering 6 phases or stages of application development lifecycle. So let me show you. Our first stage is discovery phase. So what is discovery phase? Under discovery phase, there are 5 major key points one need to take care of. So I very briefly mentioned over here. I've very briefly mentioned over here the 5 key points and so on, right? So we would be covering these 5 key points in great detail. What discovery phase is. For instance, I give you an example. You want to create an application which can send files from one computer to another. For that, you need to have a defined goal, right? You need to have an idea. The idea generation process comes under discovery phase. So discovery phase would cover these 5 major topics: how to identify your users, who would benefit, what are your competitors, how to align user needs and business goals, what would be the entire journey. So we would be studying that. The next phase is design phase. So this is very interesting phase. Under this phase, what happens? You come up with a product idea, you define how to turn that idea into a product, and you build blueprint or dummy versions of your product. So this phase is all about blueprints. How blueprints are made. How you're not actually coding right now. You're structuring your code before actual code is being written. So there are various stages. So number one, sketching, wireframes, graphic designs, prototype. So we would be covering each of these stage in detail. For instance, what is sketching? Sketching would be like drawing your application layouts. So you can see there are so many layouts of one single application. So these are representing different screens. This could be login screen. This could be home screen. This could be your subscription page and so on. This could be your FAQs, contact us. So there are different screens that you would be sketching. And how you do that? You do that with the help of simple pen and paper or on whiteboard or some analog method. This is all about analog. You're not doing anything fancy over here just with pen and paper. So we would be seeing beautiful examples of how websites are being sketched, and we would be seeing the entire process. The second part, if we see what is wireframe or graphic design. So sometimes many companies club these two together. So what is wireframe and graphic design? So these are two-dimensional sketches. So I would say these are two-dimensional sketches, no functionality yet. It is kind of a visual guide that illustrates how your application would look like in reality. So this might seem overwhelming right now, but don't worry. Everything would be covered in immense detail, great detail, everything would be covered. So what wireframe actually is, it does not represent your full design of the app, but key screens and interfaces. For instance, you want to just see what key screens of your application would be. So what key screens would be? So few key screens you design, and that happens under these two categories. Last part of this particular subsection, the design phase, would be prototyping. What is prototyping? It is a process of creating a replica of your final product. So you're creating a replica. This is not the actual product also. You're creating a mock-up of your final product. Your mock-up right now has very limited functionality. Why this is created? To get feedback from bunch of users or investors, so that actual code, at the time of actual code, some errors are eliminated at pre-hand, and final product does not have as much errors as it would be if we are not following these processes. So this would be covered. These all sketching, wireframe, graphic designs, prototype would be covered under design phase. Moving ahead, our next phase is development phase. So here, this is the part that we all were actually waiting for. The actual coding starts happen at this phase. Work gets divided into two broad categories: client side and server side. What is a client side? Client side is like how application will look like and what what can be done to make the user experience very smooth? So client side is all about, this is client side, just see. So how application would look like, so that user can have a very beautiful example. For instance, you open Facebook, all the page, the heading, the images, the color texture, the font, that is client side. And what is server side? Server side deals with backend part, the part that user does not see, like where data is being stored, how authentication is happening, how security parameters are checked. Authentication, for instance, if you type in wrong user ID and password, you would not be able to enter into Facebook's account, right? If you enter right username, right password, then only you are able to access your account. So those checks happen at server side. So we would understand them under development phase. Let's move ahead. The next phase would be quality assurance phase. All testing happens at this stage. Testing can be of many types: unit testing, manual testing, automated testing. So this section is all about testing, how it is done. Next is the release phase. After our application passes required test parameters, the product is launched in the market. That happens under release phase. So launching happens. So we would be studying when those parameters are met. What is the criteria to check those parameters? How much testing percentage should be passed by an application? We would be understanding them under release phase. How launching happens? What obstacles you can face at release phase? And we often assume that our part as a developer is done once the application is released, but it is not correct. The last phase is very important for every developer. That is maintenance phase. What does it include? Post-launch services, bugs fixing, updates, adding new features. Everything is taken care of in maintenance phase, right? So all these phases, all these 6 stages would be covered in great detail once we reach application development lifecycle. So let's move ahead. So let me show you 2 very beautiful analysis to display how important each phase is. First is risk and complexity analysis. So this analysis was done, and why this was done? So at the time of idea generation, our app seems to be very complex. We do not know how to execute, what needs to be done. Every step seems to be very complex. So let me show you a very beautiful graph. So just focus over here. This is the current project at the time of idea generation. We've just discovered it. This is discovery phase. We are just figuring out what needs to be done, how needs to be done, when needs to be done, who would do it, everything. So our application structure seems to be very complex, and risk also seems to be unpredictable. It's variable in nature. Risk is high. We do not know what may go wrong. Just see the cluster. What may go wrong, we do not know. So this is the discovery phase. At that time, the application is highly risky, highly complex. But for us, we know 6 stages. If we know it and we follow them along, then after every stage, after every stage, the complexity and risk tends to reduce. They start becoming more predictable and easy to handle. By the time we reach the development phase, by the time we reach the phase where we actually code, if we have very diligently followed the discovery phase process, we followed the design phase process, then at the time of coding, we face very less errors. Our app seems to be very easy to execute because we know the structure of it, what needs to be done, what error needs to be avoided pre-hand, and so on. And everything becomes very constant in nature. We know what risk would come, how we would tackle it. But if we consider this scenario, we do not know which risk would come at what point of time. It's so unpredictable. So this is one way to show how each phase is very important. Sometimes we as developers directly jump to the core coding projects, core coding, and we fail. Why? Because we have not understood the discovery and design phase. If you want to design a simple calculator application only, just see, you need to know everything, how your calculator would look like, how many buttons, what color would they, what color you need to use, who would do it, at what time. So everything happens at these two phases. So we would cover them. So the second analysis is also very important. It shows how much time was spent to get a successful application. It was done on some major companies, some developers from major companies, and they through that data we found out how much time everyone is spending to create a successful application. Just see. So this is just remember this. I'll just bring up some numbers right now. So 25%, you can see 25% of time is spent on idea. What idea is, what needs to be done, and so on. Then if you move ahead, 35%, around 35% on research and design. Research and design. Only around 15%, only 15% time was spent on actual coding. Only 15%. We sometimes start coding and we feel we have to spend all the time on coding aspect. That's not correct. Every phase has its importance. So major chunk 25%, major chunk research and design. Very less chunk is the coding part, then testing and then launching phase. Why very less time on coding? Because we have reduced the complexity. We have reduced the risk. So the amount of time required to code an application greatly reduces, greatly reduces. And that's why only 15%, only 15%. So this shows that every phase is so much important. Just ensure that we give adequate time to each stage. So let's move ahead. So this was our second section, which was application development lifecycle. If you have not understood some terms like discovery, design, development, testing, do not worry. I'm reiterating myself, do not worry. Everything would be covered in great detail once we reach this section. Okay, so let's go to our curriculum back. So we have understood briefly what application development cycle would be. The third part would be required tools and software. So we know we want to code something, right? But we need tools and softwares for that. For example, just like carpenters have tools, right? They cannot start their job without their tools. Web development tools can significantly streamline creating website content. These tools help reduce friction in website content creation. There are surplus tools available which might lead to confusion. To help us out here, I have researched and created a list of essential tools required to get you started. So you need not to worry about anything. I would tell you which tool we can use, how we can install it, and everything. Let me show you 3 examples and what we would be covering in this section. So our first tool would be code editor. So why need of code editor? Under this section, we would answer WH questions. What are WH questions? WH questions are like what, which, why, where, how. We would answer all WH questions related to a code editor. Some of the questions would be like, what are code editors? Why we need code editor? What are parameters of a good code editor? Which one to pick? There are numerous code editors, I'm telling you, numerous, and everyone has its own preference. But which one to pick and to how we can judge that this particular code editor is good for us? How to install a particular code editor on different operating systems, like how to install it on Windows, how to install it on Mac operating system, and so on. What are helpful extensions that can make using that code editor very easy? What are shortcuts, tips, and tricks? Every question, All these questions would be answered when we reach the code editor part of our required tools and software. So there are numerous code editors, as I said. However, in our course, the code editor that we would be using and working on is VS Code. So this was designed by Microsoft. It has amazing features, amazing extensions, which make our lives so much easier, which make writing code so much fun. So on reaching this section, all these listed questions would be answered related to Visual Studio. So this is the first tool. Moving ahead to the second tool. Our second tool is the browser. Why browser? Why browsers were created? We could have done it with anything else. Was it possible? Don't worry, I'll answer it once we reach this section. There are multiple aspects along with this question that we would be studying, like what are features, what are components, what are shortcuts, how to install, and so on. Like what is a browser, features, components, which one to pick, how to install, extensions, shortcuts, tips, tricks, everything. The same questions that we had for the code editor, we would be answering from browser. For our course, the browser that I would be using is the Chrome browser. We all are familiar with it. It's very fun to use. Why? Because it has so many inbuilt helpful extensions for web developers, for website building. We would be understanding them. The next part would be the developer tools. What are developer tools? Developer tools are basically that help us debug the application, test our application on the go before our application is sent into the production or has been put into the actual code. We need to test it, debug it. How we can do it? We can do it with the help of developer tool. In our course, the developer tool that I would be using is Chrome developer tool. We would be understanding the basics, what a developer tool is, how to understand the interface. It's very important. We need to know how it looks, where different functionalities of the developer tool lies. What are advantages of a particular developer tool? What can I use it for? Where, in what all scenarios can I use it for? Then different ways to access it. We can open a developer tool by multiple ways. I can be like 3, 4, 5 ways. We would be discussing all of them. What are shortcuts, tips, and tricks of a developer tool, and so on. So let me give you a quick example. For instance, I'll open some website. Allow me just a moment. And I'll briefly show you how Chrome Web Developer tool works. So I'll just open something. Okay. So is everyone able to view the Amazon screen? Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So let me go. Yeah, perfect. So this is the basic screen, right? And you want to debug it. Suppose you are building a clone website and you want to debug it, right? Because this is one e-cursor. I'll just quickly switch back to the old screen. So this is one e-commerce website. There are multiple e-commerce players in the market, and there are some small e-commerce players as well. One might tell you to create a website for them and you want to debug it. So one of the ways is you just you right click on the website, click inspect, and this Chrome developer tool would open. So let me show you some beautiful things we can do with it. For instance, if you want to, this is all HTML, CSS. This is all HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and we would be understanding it. Let me increase its size a little bit more. Perfect. So this is all HTML, CSS. This might seem overwhelming right now, but remember, this is not written by one single person. There is a bunch of developers working in Amazon to create this awesome website. So this is some of the code provided so that we can have a feel of what Chrome Web Developer can do for us. So just let me tell you an example. Suppose you want to see this website on different screen ratios. You're developing for mobile phone, you're developing for browser, you're developing for Chrome tablet. How you can do it? There's this wonderful option to toggle device. So you click over here, you can check how device would look on your iPad mini. So this is the screen ratio for your iPad. If you switch to iPhone 12, suppose, this is how your website would look. This is how your website would look on your iPhone 12 Pro. So this is very beautiful. You can debug it. So for instance, if you want to go to a particular, you're not able to find the code over here for a particular item in your website, what you can do is just click on this and you navigate to particular section. Once you click over here, you can see this getting highlighted. This is the actual image. This is the actual image, this one. If you want to see some other image, you just click over here and you can, this is the actual image over here. And these are the styling being done. So for instance, if I remove some of the styling, we can see some changes being happening over here. If I keep on removing them, the changes happen over here. So this is a very brief overview. So what we would be understanding over here is what is the interface, how many functions are over here, what we can do with it, how we can debug our application, how we can make sure we catch errors before submitting our code, and so on. So this was one example, very quick overview what Chrome web developer tools can do for us. Okay, so this was a very brief example. So let's move ahead. Let's see what our next section has. So this is the required tools, softwares, and everything. So the next section is very important section. So this is front end, back end, and full stack. So right now, the front end part, this one, what are the things that we would be covering? Some major questions come to our mind. What actually front end is? Which technologies come under front end? What is the role of front end web developer? Similarly, for back end, what is back end? Which technologies? What skills are needed? And what is full stack? Because in the market right now, demand for full stack is immense. Companies are hiring full stack developers way more than before. How to become a full stack web developer? What actually full stack is? So we would be discussing everything in this particular section very briefly. And once we understand the basics of it, we would be jumping to the core curriculum, what actually programming is, some other concepts like what is version control, Git, and so on. Apart from that, core technologies, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Once we are done with it, our core curriculum, and we move to core curriculum, the actual coding part starts happening. We'll start creating websites. But knowing everything that we've listed before is very important. So let's move ahead and understand the front end, back end, and full stack web development very briefly right now. So let me go back to my whiteboard. I'll just clear it up. Okay. The first part is the front end web development. So let's see. So what actually front end is? So this is one user screen, right? Suppose this is Amazon only. Anything that you see on your screen, button, image, your text, another submit button or add to cart button or delete button, this logo, your title, your description of the product, your account information, your number of products in the cart, everything is front end. Whatever you can click, whatever you can see on your screen, that is front end. So for instance, if I move back to Amazon, just see over here, this logo, this particular location, your sign-in information, orders, cart, this nav bar, these buttons, this hamburger button, then this particular banner, images, tags, everything that you can see and click on is this footer, everything is front-end web development. So everything that you can see on your screen is front end. Just understand this right now. Moving ahead, which technologies? So the major technologies are HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and React. Why these? More than 98% websites are built with these technologies. More than 98% websites that we are using are built with these technologies. And the Chrome developer tools and everything are designed in such a way that they can read these technologies without us writing specific code for them. They can read it by default. Their search engines are designed with that. What HTML does, let's very quickly understand what HTML does. It's like answering what question of website. What I need to put in a website. I need to put buttons. I need to put images. For instance, buttons, images, and so on. Uh, this is the HTML part, the structure. HTML defines the structure. What CSS would do, how part, how this structure would look like. Would it be blue color? Would it be red color? Would the font size be smaller, or would the font size be bigger, and so on? How it would look. And what JavaScript and React does, they add the functionality. What would happen if I click this button? What would happen if I click this button? What would happen if I hover over this image? What would happen if I click to this logo, and so on? For instance, if I show you an example where these images should be, this is done with the help of HTML. That I need to put an image, I need to put some description, I need to put a logo, I need to put location, I need to put this input bar. This is all HTML. Now, what color, what size, what font is all decided by CSS. And what JavaScript does, what would happen if I click this? A new page opens. This is with JavaScript. What would happen if I click back to logo? We go back to our home page. This is with JavaScript. So JavaScript provides the functionality. We would be discussing this in detail. The next part is, what are the roles of a front-end web developer? Very important. We need to understand this, what a general day in a life of front-end web developer goes through. They're just very basic things that we need to understand right now, like building interfaces. What is an interface? This is an interface. A screen is called an interface. This is an interface, nothing more. Very simple. How to build? We discussed HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Then cross-browser environment that we would be discussing in the browser part. On different browsers, will my website work? Will my code work? Is my code compatible with all the websites, with all the operating systems, with all the browsers? And last, the maintenance part. Just see how every phase of application development is happening over here. This is your discovery phase and design phase. This is your development phase. Now this is your this one is your maintenance phase, and this comes under development phase only. These two are development phase. These are design and discovery phase. This is updating current websites to modern standards. This is maintenance phase. So we're just maintaining them as per modern web standards. So this is what front-end web development part, the section, the subsection would look like. So we would understand them very, very slowly and very comfortably in a very clear overview with very impactful examples. So let's move ahead. The second subsection under this main section would be the backend web development. Just like front end, we get curious to know what is backend. So as we discussed, the backend is the part that is not visible to user. Your account information, your data information. If you want to access something, if you want to store something, if you want to retrieve a data, that is happening at the backend part. This is not visible to user. There is some computer out there in the world which is providing that information. We do not know what that is right now, but under this section, we would cover that. The next question would come, which technologies? Now, so right now we're using JavaScript as our main language, and under JavaScript, if we want to write backend part, the amazing technology is Node.js. And under Node.js, there's a framework Express.js, through which we can write CRUD operations. What is CRUD? So very, very brief. What is CRUD? We would be understanding under this particular section. CRUD is creating a website, replacing data, updating data, deleting data. It's like creating some data, replacing data, updating data, deleting data. These are CRUD operations. So these four terminologies are very important for every web developer. I would say for front end, for back end. We can check Postman like services under this section. While dealing with backend part, we can check request response cycle. We would do that. Get request, post request, put request. We would be understanding those. And the third part, the third question can come, what actual skills are needed for a backend web developer? So if we talk about backend web developer, the actual skills that are needed is knowledge of your backend language, that is Node.js or Express.js. Then understanding the security compliances, how to authenticate, how to put security checks so that if you're creating a backend for login page, you need to check if your data is matching or not. The most important thing that I want to tell you is that for every backend web developer also needs to know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because the backend developers are receiving that data from the front end part and providing a response in return. So they need to understand this. They cannot move directly to Node.js. Why? Because Node.js is written on top of JavaScript. So you need to know JavaScript first, and then only you can write Node.js. And the next important part is how to host, knowledge about hosting environments or database administrations. And when we talk about database, the one that we would be using is MongoDB. This is very important to handle the data, where data is being stored, from where we can access the data. We would be using MongoDB. And last part is having knowledge about version control, Git, GitHub. You might have heard terms about these terms. We would be discussing them very briefly right now, but once we're done with some coding part, I would suggest then doing version control. Okay, so this is the backend part. Let's see what full stack web development is. Okay, full stack web development. What is full stack web development? Full stack is composed of front end, back end, and database. We've seen front end as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React. Back end Node.js, your Express.js, your MongoDB. Oh, sorry, not MongoDB over here. MongoDB needs to become under database. So what is full stack? This small section that you're seeing, this small section is full stack. Person who is having knowledge of front end, back end, and databases. So this is your full stack. How to become a full stack web developer? Very important question. We would be covering every aspect of it. How to become? Very brief overview. Get used to seeing the code. Sometimes looking at code seems very overwhelming. How to read code, how to read the documentations, the official documentations, we would understand that. What official documentations are, we would see. The next step should be understanding your front end part. Then side projects, very important. Once you understand front end part, build side projects, as many as you can. They can be very small, like your to-do applications, your calculators, to very big projects like cloning Instagram, cloning YouTube, and so on. Then once you're done with it, then only move to backend. Directly moving to backend under JavaScript is not recommended. Then get comfortable with GitHub. Once we're done with front end and backend, then move to version control. And for instance, you've completed all these steps and you're from non-tech background, or you do not have any experience as of now, or you do not have any job in tech field. If you're getting an internship, go for it, because in internships, you have lots and lots of hands-on experience. You get to know how actually things work, because expectations from an intern are very low, but the amount of work provided is very high. That gives you a lot of exposure. If you get an opportunity to work under internships for some good companies, go for it. And last, very important part, make it a habit. You have to code every day. Coding every day can only help. If you're coding twice a week or thrice a week and rest of the days you're not able to code, I'm telling you that would not help you become a good full stack web developer, because every day things are changing. Every day technology is getting enhanced. Code every day. The last part, why companies are hiring full stack web developers more? Very interesting topic. Number one, they have extensive knowledge. Why? Just see this part. They have front end, they have back end, they have database under their bucket. So anytime any error comes, they need not run here and there, ask for help. They have extensive knowledge to know what needs to be done over here. Number two, handling issues. They have worked on all the technologies. So they know how to handle issues, how to debug front end part, how to debug back end part, how to access database. Number three, customized outputs. What are customized outputs? So customized outputs are like, for instance, there is some website and every time you're following the same approach. But when a full stack web developer joins in, he can give inputs for front end, he can give inputs for your back end, he can give inputs for your databases and so on. So he can customize the entire web architecture for an application. Then better project delivery. How? If you have some deadline in 1 month and 10 people are working on that project, then you need to ask each one of those 10 guys or girls to submit the assigned work under deadline. But for full stack web developers, usually 1 or 2 full stack web developers are doing the entire work of those 10 different guys. And so project delivery becomes easier. Now, 2 guys working together are able to deliver project much more easily and in a comfortable way. They deliver faster with better quality, and the development happens as per the expected project. And last, cost saving. For instance, if you are a CEO of a company and if you want to hire some front-end web developer, some back-end web developer, you need to pay them both. But instead, you hire a full stack web developer and you need to pay a little bit less. So it saves cost for the company as well. So this is a very generic overview what full stack web development is. So when we reach this section, we would cover the technicalities of it. We would cover the actual practices we need to follow. What are best practices? What are coding practices? How we can find errors very easily, and so on. So anything you want me to explain again, any overview you want me to give? So we've understood like the introduction of internet, application development lifecycle, required tools and softwares, front end, back end, full stack web development. So before moving ahead, let me show you a very beautiful video about these 3 technologies. A very short video that would help us understand what actually we are dealing with and how we can get the most out of it. So let me pull up that video real quick. Okay, cool. So let me play that video, and do let me know if everyone is able to hear the sound. Okay.
Oh, good.
Okay. Is everyone able to hear the sound? There's no sound, right? Okay, let me just. Okay. So do let me know.
Together to what is a full stack? A full stack is a combination of 3 different pieces of technology that work together.
Is it audible now? Perfect. So I'll just play the video right from the beginning, and a very short video telling what front end is, what back end is, what full stack is. Let's see.
What is a full stack? A full stack is a combination of 3 different pieces of technology that work together to make a website function. You might have seen these terms before. Each of them has a unique, distinct role to play in creating a full stack application. The front end is the actual content that you see when you visit any website, which is made up of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This is text on the screen, the videos that you can watch, or the items you can add to your cart. If you can click on it, it's the front end. The people who work on the front end are known as front-end developers or engineers. The back end, or the server, is the brain of the web page. Some of the popular programming languages used in the back end are Python, JavaScript, and C#. The back end dictates what happens when something is interacted with on the front end, like clicking a link or signing into your favorite site. The people who work on the back end are known as back-end developers or engineers. The database is where we keep all the data, using programming languages such as MySQL, MongoDB, or Azure. This is where we keep all the data like login information, account balances, and anything else we might need to access later on. The people who work on the database are known as database developers or engineers. For example, when you log into your favorite video streaming service, you type in your email and password on the front end. When you hit enter, that data is sent to the back-end server to be processed. This processing ensures you typed in the correct email address and password combination by checking the database to see if what you just typed in matches what you signed up with. If there's a match, the back-end server logs you into the site and lets you see your homepage. The front end now looks different, and instead of a login form, you can click on a video and start watching. And there you have it. By combining the front end, back end, and database together, you can create a full stack application. The people who work on all three of these components are known as full stack developers or engineers.
Perfect. This was the prep curriculum that we would be following in this particular upcoming weeks, which, as we discussed, the basics of internet, how web works, what World Wide Web is, application development cycle, different stages, tools and softwares, front end, back end, full stack, very easy to go illustrations and very easy to understand examples, live websites, different resources we can follow. So we'll go through different documentations, how to read a documentation, how to extract the exact code needed. Because one golden rule I'm telling you in coding is you cannot know everything. You cannot know everything. And you are bound to face errors. Errors would come. So we need the best way to overcome this is how to use search engines for our help. Like how to Google a problem, how to this art of Googling, right? You need to ask right questions so that you can get right answers. How to do that? What websites are available? What developer platforms are available to us where we can seek help, like Stack Overflow, some other platforms as well, where we can put our questions, get answers back, get in touch with other developers, and so on. There's so much to cover. And in this journey, yes, please. So in this journey, we would be covering each of them in great detail. So what I usually follow as teaching approaches, like our session is for 90 minutes. And sometimes understanding so many concepts for a longer period of time tends to become very difficult to comprehend. So usually what I do for myself is I just it's 90 minutes. Okay, I'll teach for 80 minutes and last 10 minutes would be for your recaps and overviews and questions and answers. So what we would do in such a way, like around 70 to 80 minutes, we would study the full topic of the day, and remaining part we would go for the recaps and your question and answers. So we can divide that as well. The like 10 to 15 minutes, like half of the time we can put at the beginning of session to recap what we did yesterday, and half we would put at the end what we did today. Yes, please. Anyone wants to speak? Like anything anyone wants to share? Because I can hear someone.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
So at the first slide, I saw the graph and prototype. So what's the difference between these two?
These sketching wireframe graphs, those you're saying?
Yeah.
So graphs are basically you're putting your idea onto paper. Suppose you have 10 screens and you're wireframing them, how each screen would be connected. And prototype is actually putting color to your application, how actually your application would look like. So this is like mock-up, like out of 50 screens, you've created 2 major screens to show the client, okay, this is the login form and this is the home page. This is how it would look like. And you get the feedback from them so that you can make some improvements and changes. There is no functionality being added, no code being written, only the sketching, designing, and structuring part happens at design phase. So we would be covering that in great detail. I understand right now I've discussed so many topics in the overview, and we would be covering them, each of them. Don't you worry at all. This is just the overview, every stage with examples, with practical websites that are doing it, practical softwares that are doing it. We would understand them, we would get knowledge of it, which softwares you can use. There are some online softwares for designing your application, for structuring your application, for sketching your application. We would get to know about them because these softwares depend company to company. Every company can choose some particular software for their development process. So this is not software specific. We need to understand the concept behind it, the idea behind it. So we would cover that. Do not worry that if you missed any point, if you do not understood any point, we would be going to that. This is the course that we would be following in our prep course journey. For upcoming 4 weeks, we would be following this. Each week would be dedicated to a particular topic and each subsection. And in great detail, we would not rush through the course because at the end, what we want is to create beautiful website. And that can only happen if we know how to start, where we can have pitfalls and how to overcome them. So we would get to know about them. Need not worry at all. I'm with you at every step. Yes, Talash.
Rahul, we have like 10 more minutes until we end the class. If you can take a couple of questions that are in the chat.
Sure, definitely. I'll move on to questions now. So let me see what all questions we got. Okay. Let's say. So like Omar is asking, Windows come with Edge by default. I understand that, but we can download Chrome, and that I would be telling you. I would be telling you how to install it on Windows as well as on your Mac systems. So moving ahead, is that a waterfall methodology? Yes, it's kind of waterfall methodology for the application development lifecycle. Each step is connected. First, design has to happen. Then first discovery has to happen. Design has to happen. Development and so on. That's correct. Will we be using Java or .NET? No, Shakib, we won't be using Java or .NET. We would be using Node.js for our backend part. That we are doing this course under full stack in JavaScript. So you must have heard the MERN stack, MongoDB, Express, React, Node.js, that we would be following. Moving ahead. Okay. So as Safi is asking that full stack is combination of database and web designing, is it possible to learn aspects only in 5 months? Safi, I'm telling you, the full stack journey is lifelong. You cannot learn entire thing in any point at any point of time. If you pick up, for instance, there's a concept called strings in JavaScript. There's a concept called arrays. If you pick that only, now you can spend 1 year over that topic and that would not finish. There is so much depth. But what we are trying to do over here is getting industry ready, covering the topic so that at any point of time, if you face something related to that topic, it's not new to you. You can pick that up and you can continue to learn. It doesn't feel like a roadblock to you. You know the basics, but you need to dive deep as per the project requirement. So that we would be covering, that approach strategy we would be covering in 5 months. Will we cover agile or waterfall? Will it be MERN stack? It is not particularly MERN stack. It is the technologies are related to it. We must have seen we're using MongoDB, we're using Express, we're using React, we're using Node.js, not not I won't say it is only, we will only stick to MERN stack, because if we needed to stick MERN stack, I would have started with core curriculum only. I would not have spent my time. This is web dev journey. Let me tell you, this is web dev made easy. I'm targeting the entire web development process, how it happens. This is where we developers sometimes fail to get the most out of it. We directly jump to this without understanding the basics of the what is happening under the hood. So we would be doing that. Any more questions? Feel free to put on chat, because I'm telling you, no question is stupid or no question is small or big. Do not feel that. If you want to learn, put every single question you want clarification on. Because if you do not need to understand, if you do not understand a particular concept, it would pile up. And once it gets piling up, we tend to lose motivation to stay on this journey. The motivation behind being a full stack web developer is to be ready that doubts would come, error would come, and just have the right mindset, what the approach would be to overcome that. So any more questions? Feel free to ask.